Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Charles Dyer, and you're listening to a reading of The All Guardsman Party by Shaggy. Link to the full story will be in the description. I hope you enjoy. And as always, stay alive out there.
Security level, magenta. Transcription server to startup sequence. Now is the time for all good men to come to the aid of the Emperor. Planet: Joseph Harlock sucks at cards. Location: Precinct House J1, Jack Hive. Meeting room: Justice 277-A. Local time: 21:15. Date: redacted.
In the name of the Emperor and the Pax Imperialis, I hereby call this 15th daily meeting of the Harlockian Governing Council to order. Per the regulations of Transitional Governments Council, I will now call the roll and review the minutes of our last meeting. Inquisitorial Observer. Not now, man. Everyone knows what they're here for. At least I hope you all do by now. Let's get this started. Administratum, you go first. Go. The Administratum representative. Governor Marshall, representing the Adeptus Ministorum, Priest Gregory Harmond, representing the Adeptus Administratum, Subprefects Lawrence DuPont, observing on behalf of the Holy Orders of the Emperor's Inquisition, Inquisitor redacted, representing the Harlockian noble houses.
This ends page 1. Page 134. Ecclesiarchy representative. And finally, we've begun recalling the preachers we deployed to the lower hab blocks of Jack and Queen Hive. We believe that the spiritual health of their lower classes is in acceptable order, but we have some concerns about Inquisitorial Observer. Yes, and you're sending them to the middle and upper levels of 7, as I suggested a week ago. Please inform that flatulent bag of augmetics and moral platitudes masquerading as this world's deacon that if he doesn't start performing his duties with a little more alacrity, I'll be forced to take personal control of your affairs. Or maybe I'll just second all of you to the Orders Familialis. At least they know how to take a damn hint. The Ecclesiarchy representative. I must humbly protest your... That's nice. Anything else? No? Then you're dismissed. All of you. No, don't look at him, damn it. I said we're done here. Go. Get. Off with you. Governor Marshall. Meeting adjourned. End of page 134. Page 137. Inquisitorial Observer speaking. Good show, Governor Marshall, but if you could just dial the law thing down just a little bit, and that'd be great. Sir? Now, where were we on these arrests? I've received confirmation that the Inquisitorial convoy will be arriving for them in 3 days, and I expect your men to have the entire collection ready. The last of the fugitives was apprehended this morning. We'll have shuttles ready to begin transferring them into your custody as soon as you're ready. Inquisitorial Observer. My custody? No, I'd be wasted on guard duty. And I've got plenty on my plate putting this whole mess of a planet back in working order. I shudder to think what you'd do without me. Don't worry. Headquarters has sent several of their, shall we say, less intellectually inclined inquisitors to handle the transportation of these traitors. I'm sure they'll be able to handle any problems, and I think I'll send my interrogator along too. She's been having trouble staying focused lately. Time for a change, I think. Sir? Never mind, just be sure to have all your best arbiters handling the briefed on the transfer procedures I sent over. Remember, the artifacts go first, then the governor and his nobles, then the secret police, and then the varying adepta traitors. And the rogue agents? Inquisitorial Observer speaking. What? Those idiots! This convoy is for the important prisoners. The whole point is to keep them as isolated from any outside support as possible. So you've requested a separate transfer ship, then? For them? Of course not. Well, the Inquisition, not to mention me personally, will be more than happy to make an example. They themselves are completely unimportant. Just send them over on the next Arbite prison ship you've got going that way. End of page 137. Page 138. Governor Marshall speaking. Adeptus, Arbite vessels are not prison ships. They are the fist of the Emperor's justice, enforcers on the Pax Imperialis, the longest arm of the Yes, I get the picture, but they are Imperial vessels. They surely have a brig, or at the very least a closet or laundry room where you can dump drunken crew. Chuck the idiots in there.
You are instructing me to transport a rogue team of highly trained inquisitorial agents to their trial in a laundry room.
Oh, come on. They're highly trained inquisitorial agents in the same sense that you were a traffic officer. Just because someone with a low sense of humor declared them as such doesn't make it true. And in any case, they'll be on an entire ship full of our biddies. Not even the most brain-damaged, slow-witted, incompetent meathead of an officer would let themselves, be taken by, Governor Marshall. ... Inquisitorial Observer. Well, I mean, actually...
Very well. I will see to it that the delivery to the Inquisitorial headquarters personally. My second in command will fill in.
No! I need you here to keep things running. Maintain the rule of law on this dangerously criminal world and all that stuff. Look, just ship them off and don't worry about it. That's a direct order.
Sir.
Good. That's settled then. Just let me know when your ship arrives, should we have the mundane evidence cataloged and be ready to transport then and possibly report on. End of page 138. Watch log. The unflinching adherence. Current anchorage, Jack Station. Joseph Harlock sucks at cards. Current shifts, 1. Officer on deck, First Officer Mills. Timestamp, corrupted. New section begins 6:15:06:20. First Officer. He wants us to put them where? Doesn't he know we have a brig? Communications Officer. Yes, I told him the Inquisitor requested it specifically. First Officer. The Inquisitor? These are inquisitorial prisoners. Communications Officer. He, didn't say, just that they weren't important and their crimes were included in the official transfer request. I have it here. First Officer. These are parking violations. Are you sure he was the Governor Marshal? Yes, definitely. Very definitely. First Officer. None of this makes any sense. Communications Officer. I told him, sir. He just said it wasn't our job to understand. To understand the law. Just to enforce it. He's right about that, at least. Who the hell did these guys piss off to get themselves shipped to Inquisitorial headquarters for a bunch of unpaid parking tickets? Communications Officer. The Inquisition? Well, obviously, the poor dumb bastards. Get this filed away to the quartermaster's office along with the shipping request and inform the head medicae that she's getting a new patient. Oh, and send a copy of the head protector as well. At least this means we can switch a few of his trainees from janitorial to guard duty. He'll like that. Now, please, tell me the rest of the overnight communiques were more sensible. Announcements. All hands notice. Laundry Room B. Until further notice, Laundry Room B is considered a restricted area off limits to ship crew and to be kept under guard at all times. Laundry deliveries and pickups will continue as scheduled via the starboard entrance. Contact the training office with any issues relating to this change. All hands notice. Tech heresy. The modification of ship systems by the unordained is an abomination in the photoreceptors of the Omnissiah. Acts of tech heresy will be punished. You have been warned. All hands notice. Laundry changes. Laundry Room B is to remain sealed to all personnel pending Mechanicus inspection. Repairs on the surrounding rooms and corridors are scheduled for completion within 3 days. Until further notice, Laundry Room A is to be considered a restricted area off limits to non-essential ship crew and to be kept under guard at all times. Laundry deliveries and pickups will continue as scheduled via the port entrance, including all laundry originally routed to Room B. Contact the training office with any issues relating to this change. All hands notice. Laundry schedule. Laundry will be processed in the order it is collected and delivered. Priority will not be given to anyone. All hands notice. Fraternization with prisoners. All our biddies and ship crew are reminded that the personnel and commercial interactions with prisoners, including those confined to locations other than the brig, is forbidden and will be punished if discovered. All hands notice. Reminder. Regulations on gambling. All our biddies have been advised that while Pax Imperialis does not concern itself with gambling, under Arbite naval regulations, all game of chance are strictly forbidden. Crew are strongly encouraged to follow this example. as well. All hands notice. Lost equipment. All hands are reminded that per Arbeit Naval Regulation 39M-1025-J, any equipment assigned to them by the Quartermaster's Office is their responsibility, and its misplacement is considered a Class 3 infraction. All hands notice. Identification badge. Any Arbeit or crew to come across an unattended identification badge is to immediately deliver it to the head intelligencer's office. Lost and found. A lost and found has been established adjacent to Laundry Room A. Some fees may apply. Head Intelligencer Clouseau. All hands notice. Reminder. Firing range rules. All weapons, ammunition, and war gear checked out for training purposes must be either expended or returned by the end of the shift. Any Arbeit who fails to adhere to these rules will be banned from the range. All hands notice. Firing range restrictions. The following items are no longer available at the firing range until further notice. Anti-personnel mines, breaching charges, demolition charges, frag, crack, and flash grenades. These restrictions will be lifted following the next resupply. All hands notice. Warpstone. The navigator has identified an unexpected warp storm obstructing our course. All Arbites, including trainees, are to assume their counterboarding stations until such time as the navigator gives an all clear. The forward and aft chapels will be holding continuous services for the duration. All hands notice. Conspicuous valor in the face of the unholy. Trainees Mulleroy and Murtaugh have hereby promoted to full trooper in recognition of their miraculous, completely unassigned defense of the starboard section of Deck 3 during yesterday's warp incursion. Medical Work Release Program. Due to the recent influx of wounded, select medically trained personnel prisoners have been given ship access between Laundry Room A and the Medbay under supervision of Troopers Mulleroy and Murtaugh. Head Intelligencer Clouseau. Terrence Dockbosson, 5th of his name and Shift 3 Dock Boss of Small Craft Bay 12, watched approvingly as his team moved to receive the last incoming shuttle of the shift. His appreciative nodding and thoughts of the meal waiting in his cabin were interrupted by the opening of one of the bay's personnel doors and the arrival of 2 fully armored Arbites. Knowing a snap inspection when he saw one, Terrence regretfully bid all thoughts of a hot soya dinner goodbye and moved to greet the taller of the pair, who looked to be a full investigator instead of the usual grunts that drew the duty. He was surprised, albeit pleasantly, when the helmeted investigator waved off his proffered manifest and merely ordered him to gas it back up and take an early break. We'll handle the rest. Terrence rounded up his team and directed the investigator towards the bay's master control altar, which the taller Arbeit was unexpectedly interested in. As they made their way towards the exit, the youngest member of his team paused and asked whether it was really okay to leave their post before the end of shift. The dock boss just paused and directed the boy's attention to where the shorter Arbeit was waving a stack of official documents in the face of an annoyed shuttle pilot, who batted them aside and asked, "Aren't you a little short for an Arbeit?" The Arbeit shrugged. "Aren't you a little mouthy for a delivery man that wants to get a proper tip and not have his knees broken?" As the pilot, who was evidently unfamiliar with Arbites and their penchant for literalness, puffed up with indignation and began to respond, Terrence clapped the boy on the shoulder and steered him out of the exit door, shut with the bellow of, "I'm not a damn delivery man, you lit my knee!" Decades later, Judge Captain Terrence Dockbosson VI fondly recalled that as the day he decided to abandon several generations of family tradition and enlist in the Arbites. Nubby had just finished cramming the annoyingly loud pilot into a handy shipping container without any help from Tink, mind you, when one of the bay's doors opened to admit 2 more Arbites, pushing a loaded pallet and a wheelchair, respectively. "Why's the shuttle still closed, Tink?" asked the wheelchair-pushing Arbit. "We've got a bit of a time limit here, don't you know?" Up at the control altar, Tink jabbed a few more buttons before throwing his arms up in the air. "What the hell do you want me to do about it, smartass? This thing just controls the doors and the maglocks. Go ask Nubby. He's the one who was too busy arguing with the pilot to notice it closing." "I thought he had a key or something. What sort of idiot locks himself out of his own damn shuttle? That's what I want to know." Doc groaned and rubbed his oversized helmet as the pair started arguing. He looked for his wheelchair's occupant for some sort of direction, but given the amount of anesthetics and painkillers Sarge was currently on, all he got was a few spit bubbles and a snore. Twitch watched as the pair for a second, in case some order of some sort was forthcoming, and then shrugged, popped open one of the crates on his pallet, and pulled out a breaching charge. He'd already started adhering the explosive to the shuttle's airlock before the other guardsman noticed what he was doing and shouted at him to stop. The demolitions trooper turned to see what everyone was so upset about, with him sticking explosives to their getaway vehicle. Behind him, the airlock door slid open, briefly sticking to the charge before scraping it off to reveal 3 figures. The robed, data slate holding man on the left paused as his foot landed in something sticky, looked down, and froze. The carapace, armored, and helmeted sister of battle on the right of the group froze as well, staring blankly at the assorted arbitties at the bottom of the ramp. The third figure, the one with the Ordos Xenos inquisitorial rosette on his chest, didn't freeze. Now, if one of you could be so kind as to explain what in the Emperor's name do you think you're doing here, I might just be willing to... Interrogator Sergeant! Nubby, Tink, and Twitch all made choking noises. Doc, however, popped his visor up and looked Inquisitor Oak straight in the eye. Escaping? The Inquisitor paused, began to speak, paused again, then exploded. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. Now you're doing this? Now? All 4 guardsmen took a step backwards. Do you have any idea how hard this is going to make? The Inquisitor abruptly broke off his rant and deflated. No, of course you didn't. You didn't, because you weren't need to know, did you? You don't mean, began Tink, only to be cut off as the data slate-wielding interrogator announced, 10 minutes, sir. Oak winced. No time. I'll explain later. I promise you, but if you're going to salvage this, I need you all to get back to your cells, right now. Twitch looked to Nubby, who looked to Tink, who looked to Doc, who vainly looked down at Sarge for a second before accepting that the buck had well and truly stopped. Oak, seeing the hesitation and interpreting it as something more than antagonized dithering, let out an annoyed groan and turned to the sister of battle at his side. Would you please do something about this? Amelia, Delorista, Animata, Triggerista, Zeldana, Malagafi, von Humperdinck shrugged, pulled off her stupid helmet and announced, Come on, you idiots, let's go. Back to your cells. She jogged down to the camp, past a slack-jawed Twitch and Nubby, and without pausing, grabbed a wheelchair from Doc. Double time, soldiers. That's an order, guardsman. Right, Sarge? The snoring non-com jerked in his seat and slurred, Abs an order, guardsman, before slumping back over again. Twitch, Nubby, and Doc shared a look and then a shrug, and then filled after the pair. Up at the control altar, Tink grumpily undid the door control overrides he just implemented with a mutter of worst escape attempt ever, fell into line at the end of the line. Amy leaned back in her chair and kicked her black and red carapace armored feet up on the large table in the middle of the laundry brig. Across from her, Nubby paused from helping Twitch unload their pallet full of crates to open one of them and pull out a double handful of bottles. The markswoman snagged the one that was slid her way and sipped at it as she eyed the familiar clutter of boxes, barricades, and occasional loop of razor wire littering the room. Admittedly, all piles of laundry and the large machines living in the walls were a bit out of place, not to mention the haphazard networks of pipes, wires, and chutes linking everything in some sort of giant ras nets in the far corner of the room where Tink was swearing at something or other. Overall, it was very homey, though she did wonder where the sandbags had come from. Nice digs. I expected a little bit more prison-y, you know? Tink poked his head from around the clutched-together control altar he was abusing. Yeah, I guess the Arbites are too incompetent to do their own laundry or something and wanted some expert help. Nice hair, by the way. Looks like she nearly got it all one color this time, and only a moderate amount of facial scarring, too. Tink flinched as Amy drew her bottle back to throw, but relaxed as she decided there were better things and uses for the first beer she'd seen in over a month. Yeah, well, Doc's girl does good work, doesn't she? The markswoman turned her head towards the curtain that had been hung around one of the bunks at the far end of the room and raised her voice slightly. Even my dearest Valentine gets a tad on the bitchy side without her boy toy around to play doctor. There was a strangled sound of protest from the little makeshift operating theater, followed by a crashing clatter and a series of cusses. Nubby and Tink both snickered. Twitch went to inspect the disturbance for sign of hostile activity. Amy smirked and sipped her drink before continuing. Seriously, though, should have heard what she said to Oak when he turned up out of nowhere wanting to haul me off. If the adept wasn't there to talk her down, she probably would have given him a round of involuntary treatment. The old smooth talker brought her around, though. She paused and tapped her cartoonishly oversized breastplate, even convinced her to loan me her combat gear for this whole sister disguise thing. Ah, Nubby made a face. You sure it's just a disguise? Because I'm getting something like 20 crates of bolter ammo around here somewhere. Not sure even why I even lets him pay with that stuff anymore. What was the disguise even for, anyway? Asked Tink. Did Oak need someone to inspect the Sororitas Covenant for signs of deviant practices and figured you know where to look? Amy flipped a single finger in Tink's direction and then shrugged. No idea. He's a tight-lipped fucker, ain't he? And I swear that interrogator of his hasn't spent more than 10 minutes off the data slate since I met them. All I know is that they showed up in the med bay with an adept and said that you guys needed my help and that I have to disguise myself as... The markswoman adopted a slightly creaky, lecturing tone. Literally anything other that isn't a guardswoman, if you can manage that. Amy paused to sip her drink. Didn't tell me a single fucking thing about what was actually going on. Just that you guys had done better than expected on your mission and had infiltrated an Arbite vessel on its way to Inquisitorial headquarters. I asked he was sure if he hadn't been arrested, and Oak said that the agent he'd sent contact to you hadn't been able to confirm anything, which is why we were all going. Twitch abruptly poked his head out from the operating theater. Agent? What agent? How was he supposed to contact us? What was his call sign? How the hell should I know? Amy shrugged again. I gathered it was some guy you knew, or one of your old interrogators, I think. Twitch paused, leaned back behind the curtain to ask Doc something, and then started swearing. Nubby and Tink both stared in confusion for a few seconds before the shorter trooper abruptly snapped his fingers. Ah! I thought I recognized that guy from somewhere. Shoulda said he was here from Oak. Bursting in all unannounced and shouting about how he had him from the Arbites from ear didn't quite convey the message. Amy raised an eyebrow. What happened to him? See that blast mark over there? Nubby gestured towards the stained section of deck plate only a few steps short of the door. Twitch did tell him to stop, lest we got the rest of them disarmed before our biddies showed up to grab him. Tink chimed in. And Doc said the head medicae got his leg back on before they hauled him off to the brig. There was a lull in conversation, in which faint metallic clicking could be heard from behind the curtain. Amy shook her head and took another sip. So speaking of Doc, whatever half-assed medical procedure he's conducting in there, her tone became a bit forced. Would anyone care to explain why the fuck Sarge is riding around in a wheelchair with nothing but a hospital gown, high as a kite and minus one hand? Nubby flinched and looked at Tink, who suddenly completely engrossed in his master laundry control unit. The ugly little trooper sighed, picked his nose thoughtfully. You remember Bane Johns? No, Amy paused. Wait, you mean Twitch's vampire orc guy? There was a triumphant shout from the far side of the curtain. You mean it was real? And he wasn't hauled off to some sort of prison? Just like that bitch was? Yeah, about that. So, no shit, there we were. Inquisitor Copernicus, or Oak, as his numerous underlings insisted on calling him, took a second to collect his thoughts before keying open the warning-covered laundry door. The meeting with the judge captain had gone quite well, and the man and his first officer had proved to be unexpectedly aware of the storm clouds gathering on the horizon, and Oak had always held the old inquisitorial adage, a little truth goes a long way. He made a note to do something for the to extra their careers, and maybe see if they had any promising new recruits coming up in through the ranks, assuming they survived the storm. Himself, of course. Oak's trip down to the evidence locker to review the Inquisitor Syssitat's in-depth report had been less enjoyable experience. He couldn't deny that the mission had been successful, beyond all reasonable expectations, really, given the situation. The man's initiative was commendable, and his plan for the next stage was going well, if not quite as brilliant as the astropathic message had suggested. But all that aside, how mind-bogglingly close everything had come to potential failure, and for such stupid reasons, shook him to his core. It was beyond Oak's understanding how someone with such an amazing analytical mind could be so petty, insufferable, and incapable of seeing the results of their own actions. He left his interrogator to sift the rest of Syssitat's drivel for the pertinent details. Right now, he needed to go have a chat with some guardsmen before they did anything else to destabilize the balance of the sector. But it turns out that nobody told the crazy fucking cogboy about the whole door thing during warp turbulence. You know, remember those squigs he kept seeing they turned him back into two gene stealers? Well, the good news is that Hydroponics Bay 3 no longer had a mutant crutoid problem. Oh, and Jim wanted to let you know that some sort of smelly shadow monsters nicked the stuff that you had stashed into the Deck 7 and disappeared. Those ungrateful bastards. So overall, pretty normal until Oak showed up and had a big secret meeting with the adepts, and those MAGA Inquisitor Copernicus cleared his throat. Amy flinched and scattered the better part of a dozen bottles as she tried and failed to stop herself from tilting over backwards. The two guardsmen sitting on either side of her scrambled to shove their own collective bottles under the table. The exhausted medic slumped a little further up, but didn't bother. Neither did the trooper who'd watched Oak enter, preferred to remain completely focused on the Inquisitor's movements while fingering something that he held under the table. Oak carefully moved his hands a little further from his weapons and directed his attention to the last guardsman and the one sitting at the end of the table that was still wearing a hospital gown. Interrogator Sergeant, slightly unsteadily, rose to his feet and began to salute, only to pause as he remembered that one medically approved drink in his hand, and he switched it to his left. There was a metallic thunk as the shiny new augmetic hand rebounded off his forehead with the force of a small hammer. He swayed for a second, attempting to maintain eye contact with Oak, then abruptly sat back down. From her position on the floor, Amy fumbled through the bottle around before settling on an unopened one and raising it high above her head. "Hi, boss. They got beer. You want one?" Oak surveyed the room for a few seconds longer and then sighed. Yes, I think I really do. I'm going to tell you a story. A long time ago, there was an Inquisitor who served an Inquisitor in the Ordos Hereticus. For several years, they pursued a heretical cult whose influence was so subtle and mysterious that even their inquisitorial comrades questioned its existence. In the end, they finally tracked the cult to an Imperial Scala progenium. They purged the Scala, but before their deaths, the heretics managed to summon a powerful demon and bind it to the body of the Scala's High Abbot, who killed all but a handful of the Inquisitor's team before he was destroyed. Following this bitter victory, the Inquisitor decided to retire to an administrative role within his Ordos, and the Interrogator was promoted to full Inquisitor. But at his master's insistence, he took up service in a separate branch of the Inquisition. Several years later, the junior Inquisitor encountered two rumors, one of a new theory of the training of the inquisitorial agents, and the other of a new inquisitorial power block, which welcomed more radical members into its rank. Something about these rumors struck him as familiar, so despite both of these things being outside the purview of a junior Ordos Xenios Inquisitor, he followed them to their source, which turned out to be his old master. He confronted his master, but not alone, and not peacefully. 5 Inquisitors died that day, including the master, who fought with a completely unexpected strength and ferocity. The junior Inquisitor later believed he was a demon host and claimed he recognized from the cult's lair. The senior Ordos Hereticus Inquisitor, who led the investigation, disagreed. Decades later, a proposal for the foundation of an inquisitorial school was put forth by the very same woman. The no longer very junior Inquisitor found this to be suspicious and investigated with prejudice. The results were similar. 6 times. 6 damn times I've tried to kill that thing, and every time it comes back in the body of one of my comrades. I've tried every banishment known to the Inquisition, at least all of those the Ordos Malleus will share with me, and it just keeps coming back. Even the time we just burned the entire planet from orbit. Eventually, it got just as tired of dying as I was of it coming back. It decided to just wait me out, laying low and pulling its strings from somewhere inside the inquisitorial headquarters, still trying to get that heretical school of its founded. So I did the only thing I could think of. I stole the damn thing's idea out from under it. And here I am, glorified kindergarten teacher, to a never-ending stream of psychopaths, incompetents, and power seekers whose own inquisitors couldn't be bothered to properly mentor them. Now, we're not where I saw myself when I was a starry-eyed young adept, but at least it gives me some influence, and I use it as best as I can to foil the damn thing's plans. For at least a century and a half, I've been in this stalemate, dancing around and keeping out of each other's to cut down to size. The damn thing has been gaining on me, though, slowly picking off my supporters and alienating me from the rest of the Inquisition, but I'm not done yet, and this time I have a way to end things once and for all. It must think so too, otherwise it wouldn't have launched its attack so prematurely. And its conspiracy may have branded me a rogue and neutralized most of my teams and allies, but it exposed itself in the process, and where it really truly mattered, it completely botched things. Which brings me to you. With your help, Inquisitor Sysitat secured a collection of heretical artifacts which had been stolen, restolen, and then re-restolen. Those artifacts, along with Sysitat's official report and every heretic on the benighted world, we put on an official inquisitorial convoy guarded by every single suspected traitor, closet radical, and power-hungry idiot both the conspiracy and the remaining allies at sector headquarters could find, putting all the bad eggs in one basket, as they say. I believe this vessel passed through what was left of them just over a week ago. The boxes which held those artifacts, on the other hand, are sitting in this ship's hold, being used to transport your personal effects and other assorted mundane evidence to the sector's inquisitorial headquarters, or they would be if you weren't currently using them to store a mixture of high explosives and alcoholic beverages, which you seemingly intend to take with you as you deserted off to Emperors Nowhere. I am, for perhaps the first time in inquisitorial history, going to assume that you weren't going to do this out of some heretical desire to undermine the fabric of the Imperium, and just didn't need to know that the entire reason you are on this ship is to smuggle those boxes into inquisitorial headquarters, where I intend to use them to banish this demon once and for all. Sarge blinked at the Inquisitor for a second, and then shot a look at Nubby, who seemed caught between incredulity and defensiveness. Doc put a hand over his mouth before one could win out. Oak leaned across the table towards Sarge. Now that you do know, though, what I need you to do about it is to put those boxes exactly where they were, complete with their contents, assuming you haven't hawked them for booze, money, or something similarly ridiculous. Nubby made a spluttering sound from behind Doc's hand. Oak ignored it. Then I need you to promise to stay put and allow yourselves to be transported to inquisitorial headquarters for your trial. Tink broke this uncharacteristically long silence. Are you nuts? They'll shoot us for heresy. Oak rolled his eyes. No, they won't. He held up 3 fingers in Tink's direction and ticked one down. First of all, despite the impressive and frankly ridiculous things you've managed to accomplish in your short inquisitorial career, the conspiracy does not consider you an important. Presumably because the 2 agents who actually knew you long enough to get past your rather unique first impression, one was executed by my own agent before he could send a report, and the other fervently argued that it was dumb luck right up until the point you incinerated her. The Inquisitor lowered another finger. Secondly, the charge is not heresy or impersonating an Inquisitor or astropathicide for that matter. It's assisting a rogue Inquisitor, and unless you are considered particularly dangerous or important, the punishment for that is imprisonment in stasis until said Inquisitor's actual trial, after which you've released into their custody pending official review of your actions. He paused for a second. Or if they're guilty, summarily executed via plasma incineration. Tink made a strangled sound. How is that any bet? Oak cut him off. And finally, I have arranged with my remaining agents at Inquisitorial headquarters to have your sentence commuted. You will instead be assigned to a considerably lower security holding facility, which just so happens to be adjacent to the mundane evidence storage warehouse, putting you in a perfect position to infiltrate it and move the boxes from the storage unit assigned to your case to the one assigned to mine. As the Inquisitor leaned back into his chair and tented his fingers in front of him, Tink, Nubby, and a slightly slurring Amy all burst into objections. Sarge ignored them and looked to Doc, who scratched his head for a second, then shrugged. Across the table, Twitch raised the detonator in his hand ever so slightly into view and waggled it back and forth. Sarge shook his head. After nearly a minute of thought, he brought both of his fists down on the table for silence, paused briefly to examine the dent left by his left hand, and then looked the Inquisitor in the eye. So let me get this straight, growled the non-com. You want us to allow ourselves to be arrested by the Inquisition, and then break out of an Inquisition prison into a top-secret storage facility, where we will then tamper with the evidence for the highest-profile case in the sector. Oak nodded. And if we somehow succeed in this mission, then what? Continued Sarge. Well, either I banish a demon that's been corrupting the Inquisition from within for over 2 centuries and use my heroic status to quash all charges against you, or he shrugged. You still wind up with a lighter sentence than what you would have gotten anyway. And you are absolutely certain that we'll get a lighter sentence. The Inquisitor looked around the table, his eyes briefly stopping on Amy, and then nodded. I've already made sure of it. Sarge sighed and rubbed his face with his good hand. Well, we've had worse missions.